Okay, that was Dr. S. Jaishankar taking a small group of questions centered around, the possibility of a joint consensus at the G20, which remains elusive right now, and also throwing light on that all-important bilateral meeting between himself and his Chinese counterpart that's just taken place a short while ago. The big focus in that meeting between the Indian and Chinese foreign ministers was, of course, on the border issue, peace and tranquility issues, the first bilateral since the Ladakh standoff began over 3 years ago. So the India-China standoff was the topic of discussion. Dr. S. Jaishankar has also said that the Ukraine issue has become a very, very polarizing issue, and it has hampered the possibility of consensus at the G20. He didn't say it, of course, in so many words, but that was the sense that the Indian External Affairs Minister was giving at this point of time. So the G20 moving into top gear. This evening we will see more statements coming out. That suspense remains over what kind of consensus, if any, will have been involved in the G20. Remember, today is only day one, tomorrow is day two. India stands as not only as the host of the G20, but in many ways is being seen as a potential calming influence for what is essentially a very, very broken and stricken and damaged world. You've got the two big, the big ticket spectacle, moments from today's G20 meetings. You've got there Dr. S. Jaishankar meeting with Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, and Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State of the United States. Two countries that have been, embroiled in an increasingly aggressive Cold War that's come to a flashpoint now in the battlefield of Ukraine. I want to go across to India today's Gaurav Sawant, who joins me live now. Gaurav, you heard what Dr. S. Jaishankar was saying just now. What stood out for you from what he was saying, Gaurav? That consensus, a joint communique at the G20, is that likely? Is work being done towards it? What's the sense that you got from the External Affairs Minister?
So the situation remains extremely grim, considering the fact that there are countries that are moving back from the position that they had reached, the consensus that reached in Bali, and that was where India had played a key role in arriving at that consensus that this is not an era of war. But countries like, perhaps, as was the case in the finance ministers meet, China and Russia are moving back even from that position when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. India trying its best to ensure that all issues are given equal treatment, especially the issues that are raised by the global south or developing countries. India has been pushing for the sustainable development goals to be considered, reliability of supply chains, energy security, food security, security of movement, all of that extremely critical as far as developing economies are concerned. Climate goals, again, the West imposing undue costs on the developing countries, and we are seeing the impact of that. Now, these are some of the issues that India has been highlighting as a leader of the global south, and using India's presidency of G20 to bring global focus on these issues. But some of the Western countries or the developed countries remain very focused on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Again, look at the ground realities, Shiv. That's not a war of India's making or global South's making, and yet there are costs that are being imposed, whether it's food prices or energy prices or supply chains, that the global South bears the cost of something that's being done by the global North at a time where India is making very clear there's only one way, which is peace, dialogue and negotiations.
Gaurav, what about the, he answered very briefly that, about the bilateral with the Chinese foreign minister. What did you pick up from that? He pretty much said what he tweeted as well, which is that the discussion centered around, the bilateral challenges, especially peace and tranquility in the border areas. Was there any indication from what he said, that there has been any kind of forward movement?
Well, there's a very firm stand that India has taken, and there's a reiteration of that stand. And that stand is for the relationship to move forward. Peace and tranquility at the borders is essential. That's the basic. And if you notice, from 2020 to 2023, India's stance has remained the same. For this relationship to move forward, China will have to restore the April-May 2020 situation. Now, we're still waiting for a readout of the Chinese side. Perhaps that will come today, later tomorrow, maybe what the Chinese Foreign Ministry says, and we'll have a little more idea of what the Chinese thinking is. But there is no dilution of India's stand. Remember, Shiv, you and I have talked about this before. You and I have covered this on Ground Zero. It's the largest standoff between the armies of India and China that's on from April-May 2020 till now, and neither side willing to back down.